In this overview, what we're going to do is talk about Paylocity, how they work, and with our clients, when we're going through the buying process and looking at different payroll and HRIS solutions, how do we look at it from our lens? All right, so this is Paylocity.com. Before we dive in, we want to know a couple of things. What are we looking to accomplish with buying a new payroll system or even evaluating one? Do we currently have one in place? Is there a list of things that we know we need or don't need? Some of the main reasons our clients ask us to get involved or start talking to them about looking at a Paylocity would be, hey, I have complaints with my reports are not as robust as they need to be. Or, the customer service, I don't have anybody I can directly speak to when I want to get something done, and that's causing me other issues. And the last thing that's usually like a big deal is there was some type of miscommunication or something that didn't happen correctly, and the client ended up in a situation with a compliance issue. Payroll tax wasn't filed on time, mishandling of an employee, something very serious that just prompted them, I gotta switch. So when we're looking at these services, I want to go ahead and say that most of these problems, when I dive in, have to do with, was the payroll company the right fit for your industry? Was the right fit for your personality type? Was it the right fit for your company and how you operate? Do you need to integrate with certain industry standard items, such as is there like time clocks and hours and wages you need to like get from a certain system that only your industry uses? Is there potentially like a 401k provider that you just have to work with? Is there a way to integrate benefits, or is there certain other systems you just no way you can change them? Are those must-haves, and how important is it to relay that information back and forth? Also, account strategy and having an account manager versus having a call center or a technology-based solution where it's like a chat feature. Depends what you're trying to get done. So let's go through some of that. And we're here. So if you wanted to log in because you were a customer, you're there. Point of this video is to go ahead and go through this as if we're buying with our clients. So first thing we do is look at who we serve. Well, that's pretty important, right? So if you see here, they have enterprise, mid-sized business, and small business. Right away, this tells me that this is likely anywhere between like 0 and 100 employees. They don't necessarily say it on the site, so it's a little harder to see. Other companies might say 0 to 50, might have 1 to 100, something like that. But mid-sized businesses can mean a lot of things. It could be, 100 to 500. It could be 100 to 1,000. Enterprise, of course, usually 1,000 plus. Again, they're not marking it here. The first question I would say to note down before we have a sales conversation with the company would be, are these different sizes, do they have different platforms? Why is that important? Well, let's say you're scaling. If you're at 50 or 60 people today and you're going to be at 1,500 tomorrow, we've worked with some people where that happens very quickly. Then you want to know, am I going to be on one platform today, put all my eggs into this basket, and then have to transfer and do another platform tomorrow? Oh my gosh, that'll be a nightmare. So that's something that I would say we want to have our clients ask. The other thing too is, what's the difference in the service level? If it's small business, am I going to just, am I going to need a little bit more hand-holding? We actually find that companies who have smaller teams, or maybe somebody who's not fully dedicated to HR, typically do have the most questions, and they don't know what they don't know. So sometimes it's hard for them to get the right service. Now, if you have a fully stacked HR team and you're a payroll expert, and that's all you do is payroll day in and day out, you still may want an account manager, because when you have a problem, it might be a big problem, right? So again, those are the things I would look at anytime I see small, mid-sized enterprise. Is it same platform? If so, what is the integration process? Of course, they'll say it's easy. It's not always easy. You'll want to look at if I think I'm going to be at 50 or 60 people, what is my company going to look like employee count wise, 3 to 5 years from now? And am I going to have to change the system over and over again? Because you don't want to have to do this repeatedly. Industry-wise, so they have education, financial services, healthcare, manufacturing, nonprofit, restaurants and hospitality, retail and wholesale, tech, all these different things. Now, this is important. If your industry is not on here, then you really want to like sit back and say, hey, is this going to be the right fit? I will say, I do think that most payroll processes and software are industry agnostic, meaning it doesn't really matter what industry you're in. Payroll is payroll. A person needs to get paid. All these things need to happen. The key is when you're looking at a technology solution, especially for this type of stuff, and you're going to manage more than just payroll. We're talking about the employee onboarding, terminations, connecting to benefits, 401k. We'll get all of that in a second. But you want to know, does this company and the people I'm working with understand how I do payroll so that when I run into issues or problems, they know how to troubleshoot it with me? Are they familiar with a certain system? Example might be with like the education system, right? If there's certain industry standards, like as far as like, hey, this is how we get these salaries. We're gonna have people who are off all summer. We have some people who are might be teaching during the summer, but that comes from a different budget, so we have to put that into a different code. How do I do that? Those are the types of things you want to make sure you understand. Financial services and healthcare, those are generally a little easier depending on where they get their money from. Exactly. The manufacturing piece, I mean, that can be complicated. There's a lot of time and attendance. Typically, you'll see a very wide variety of salary ranges, meaning that there will be different benefit classes. You might have the same department, even the same role, but you have different wages, and you have to make sure you classify those correctly. So will they help you walk through that? Restaurant and hospitality. Now that's one that can be very, very difficult to manage on any payroll system. Why? Well, because you have multiple different departments. A lot of times you have restaurants. You might have a golf course on there. You might also have the hotel. You might also have catering services, wedding planning, conference rooms, salespeople, front desk. There's so many different types of roles that need to be managed. And a lot of times you might want that to roll into something like an LMS system because you want to have a certain company culture, right? How do these people interact with it? You have the corporate folks, but then you have the people who are on the ground floor, maybe like doing the actual service. Are they going to want to, put their fingerprint on a time clock? Are they going to want to key in something that they need to? Or, does it not really matter that much? Again, that's why you want to think about your industry and how you want to operate before you go into this conversation so you can have your checklist. Retail and wholesale, I mean, look, like similar to the restaurant and hospitality game. Tech and professional services, I mean, honestly, the payroll and HR for those types of companies is usually the easiest ones to put on any system. Why? Because there's a lot of folks who are salary. Yes, they may have time, right? Time and attendance. And even if they do have time and attendance, generally, generally it's just not that difficult. You get the time, you put it in, and it calculates, right? If it all works well. Churches and religious organizations. Now, this is something that, another thing where it's like, hey, are we a part of a larger stream of organizations? Like there might be a church and it belongs to multiple other churches, and you might be the administrator at the top of the church and you have to separate everything by federal ID number. You might need to separate everything and manage it completely. You might have one EIN number in multiple different departments, right? Again, it just really does depend on how you want to run your organization. So, other thing here, we see partners and we see franchises. Partners would be more like our firm, Think HR and Insurance Services. Part of what we do is we look at the employee benefits, and then we help clients because we're in the system so much. We end up finding ways to help people out, and we'll partner. On a company like Paylocity, we really don't have much skin in the game at all. We wouldn't get paid from them, so we don't really care if somebody uses Paylocity, ADP, Paychecks. It doesn't really matter. Franchises. So sometimes it does make sense as a franchisee to just go ahead and adopt the system that the franchisor has. So if you're in a position where you're a franchisor and you're part of helping these franchisees manage all of their processes, you'll want to reach out to them, and I'm sure they have a dedicated team for this. I know that they do have some major like fitness chains and a few other things that are well-known brands you can probably check out. I know they use Paylocity. Okay, so that covers who we serve, which is, that's pretty much almost everyone gets served. There's a lot of people they work with. Let's dive into the products. So now that we know who can work with them, let's assume we can. All right, whoa. So we got a lot of little things here. You got payroll, you got global payroll, time and labor, HR, talent, benefit admin, employee experience, mobile integration, HR report. Oh, that's a lot of stuff. So again, you need to think about, do I want to house my entire employee experience under one roof? So that's like an HRIS system, right? That's what they do. A lot of people come first to a Paylocity by the name, right? You think just payroll, but payroll also flowers into benefits, right? So then you have benefits admin. Now they're not brokers, but they do work with brokers. That's why we work with them. Employee experience. This is about like, hey, do we have recognition and rewards inside the system? When somebody has like a work anniversary, or they have something to celebrate, a job milestone, we're going to put it in here and everybody's going to be able to see the experience right there. So when you go through the demo, you'll be able to check that out. Videos, right? If you have certain walkthrough videos you want to do, again, LMS system, all that stuff, would be housed inside of the employee experience here. So payroll wise, right? They have expense tracking, tax services. That's pretty standard stuff. On-demand payment. Well, let's check out exactly what that means, because for some folks, they may want to do pay advances. And, my question would be, does your company want to offer your employees the opportunity to do pay advances through payroll, right? I'm not sure that that's what this is. We'll dive into it in a second. But the garnishment services, that's simple. You definitely want your payroll company to handle that. You get a court-ordered garnishment for child support or, spousal support. You want to add that into the payroll so that's well documented, because that is your responsibility to make sure that's all set up properly. Before the employee even gets to touch it, which is why they have that. Okay, let's check that out. On-demand payment solutions. So they want you to get a demo. Yep, see, it's a pay advance program. So that's awesome. So rather than just like, letting them go to, cash and check advance or whatever it may be, they can just go literally right through Paylocity and be able to, use that. Sometimes, people run up on hard times, or they got a big vacation coming up, or any unplanned expenses. That's a great benefit for some folks to have. Global payroll. Okay, so global payroll is important to note. With global payroll, if I'm talking to my client, and many of our clients have this, where they might have 40 or 50 people in the US, and then they've got maybe 40 or 50 or 200 folks out of the US, and they would like for all of the employee experience to be on the same platform. When we're going through the demo, if that's what you want, the most important thing for us to do is understand, how does global payroll work? What countries are they in? What countries do you plan on hiring folks in? Are they true employees? Do you have an entity there? Or is it better to do an employer of record, or which is a global PEO solution, right? So we'll really want to dive deep into this. Also, do we need to do the payroll in order to have those employees integrated into the HRIS system? Those are questions that you would definitely want to ask. We'll skip on into time and labor. So time and labor, scheduling, time collection, all that. What does that really do for you? Time and attendance is really there to help you with, hey, like, is somebody in? Are they clocked in or clocked out? When you start getting into OSHA, Cal OSHA, and you have people who are in manufacturing or a plant, anything like that, you need to know who's on site, who was at work that day. If there's a major evacuation, how do you know who's in and who's out? This is something that can actually, help you out with that. You'll want to talk to the team about your specifics, but those are questions that I would have. Hey, how can I know who's in the building? Can I restrict access? Is it geocoded? Do I need a time clock? Do they do it on their phone? How can we actually collect the time and make sure we know who's at work today? Scheduling. So when people do PTO, they approve management requests, all that. Not all time solutions, believe it or not, will put that into the broader schedule. So you might have 5 people that need to be in a position out of a group of 8 at any given time, manning the phones or the plant or the machines. And let's just say, hey, 4 people called out because it's graduation week. Well, all of a sudden we're down 4 people, and Jeffrey gets sick. Now all of a sudden we got 3 people manning a 5-person job. How are we going to do that? We might lose a lot of money. So this is something that might be super important for you if you have a lot of people in roles and positions where scheduling really matters. Workflows and documents are super important. And you'll want to get this right because let's just say you're an HR team of 1 and you've got 100 people. If you're scaling or you're going through open enrollments or you're making changes or any updates to your handbook, you want to make sure that all the information is being sent out and all of the documents that need to be recognized by the employee are being recognized by the employee. You want to keep record of all that. So a lot of times these HRIS systems will now have workflows that allow you to say, hey, you're hiring somebody, phenomenal. They need a W-4, they need an I-9, they need to sign up for benefits. They also need to acknowledge the company handbook. Maybe they need a training in a certain department. They need to go over the cybersecurity policy or whatever it may be. You should be able to customize those things as much as possible. And the reason why you want to do that is you want to have a good system in place that allows you to hire people and not have to think so hard about all the things that have to happen. If you're doing that process manually now, things can slip under the radar, and this really does help out with a lot of folks. So not every system comes with this, right? It's something that we're seeing that more popular in HRIS systems, but Paylocity is pretty good because they're just focused on the software piece. Some of these companies do mergers and acquisitions and they do everything, so they don't necessarily have everything down. But this will be super important. Employee self-service. I mean, if you want to make your inbox on the HR side go down, 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 down. Number one, have a great employee experience. Make sure people are taken care of, but offer them technology that makes sense for them. They need to know where they can get the information. Most of the questions that we see employers get, especially HR teams, are like, well, when does this happen? How do I get my HSA? How do I get access to my benefits? How do I get my paycheck? Why is this incorrect? Am I supposed to get this date or not? A lot of things that can be done very quickly. Like in the employee self-service piece, you can usually get answers to those questions fairly quickly. I do find that Paylocity clients have said that their chat and their service feature, usually everything gets done. So if you set it up the right way, this is a great opportunity to minimize that inbox. Okay, compliance. Okay, so you really want to make sure a couple of things are happening. You want to make sure that with payroll taxes are being done on time. Now, payroll companies have been doing that for years. Not worried about that. But when you're doing your setup, you want to make sure that you are doing the proper rollover. If you're going from a PEO, a professional employer organization, to your own, you want to make sure, do those payroll taxes carry over? Or if vice versa, you're switching off of, say, like a Paylocity to go somewhere else, then maybe you wouldn't be on this video. But compliance wise, that's usually the first area we want to make sure that you have a balanced payroll. The other places is you want to make sure if you have employees in certain states that all the paperwork is being done. In some states, you will not be able to get the payroll company to do everything for you. You may have to set up a few things yourself. I know Washington state can be a little bit difficult for a lot of employers because it's monopolistic. So the state unemployment insurance and the way that they tax the employer and the way they do workers' comp is kind of wrapped up in the same department and in the same account. So you'll want to check, depending on the different states, that you're in full compliance as an employer, because the lines are very separated on what the company will do. Other thing is, you want to make sure that when you submit payroll, when you submit your information, what authorizations do we have before we actually submit and send the money out, right? What controls are in place? What are things we can do? Do we want to have it approved by someone before it goes out? Does it need to be audited? Also, if there's a mistake, how do we document those mistakes and how do we correct that for the employees? HR Edge. We'll have to dive into that because I don't know what HR Edge is. Okay. So it's on the cutting edge of HR support. Phenomenal. Okay, so this is their services and support. So again, usually like they won't necessarily be your HR department. I don't care what any salesperson from any company says. They're not going to show up at your door and be your full HR department. That's just not going to happen. What they are is a resource, a live person for you to talk out your problem. So the number one thing this is an area where I think people get very mixed up and they feel as though that like, oh, the service isn't great. Well, I think the expectations need to be set well. So with our clients, we let them know, hey, if you have a good question, these people will be able to give you a great solution. But if you don't know your problem or are unaware of your problem, no magical Paylocity fairy is just going to come out of the woodwork and say, hey, this is wrong. It's all about the information that you give them, and then they transmute that and put it through their system that allows you to stay in compliance. So ultimately, as the employer, you're responsible for all this stuff, all these compliance pieces. If you were on a PEO, you're still responsible and liable, but so is the PEO because you're co-employed. But in either scenario, you're always responsible for staying in compliance, giving all the right information, and acting in good faith. So you'll want to make sure that although if you do want to use a service like this, I generally think it could be paired well with like an HR service provider where they come in. We have a few clients that do work with HR service teams that are external, and they're great. They actually do all the tactical HR. They help out with the strategic pieces and even executing things like payroll and all that. This could still be a good resource for those folks too, because again, like they may be more on the strategy side. Your responsibility is to get some of these things done. If you can have a consultant come in, tell you everything that's wrong and what you need to fix, and you can take that laundry list and forward it over to your Paylocity folks. How do I do that on the system? I mean, that's a pretty good situation. And sometimes it does save you from having to hire multiple people. Okay. We're not going to get into talent yet because that's almost going backwards into another platform. And although we're going into another platform, this is more what people are, looking at. Benefits administration. So workers' comp and benefits administration, generally separate. But I do want you to think about like you have the employee. The employee has payroll, so that's all done. But now we want to look at benefits because benefits is pre-tax and somewhat post-tax, and it does impact their check. So this is something that people usually want to integrate. If you've already got the deductions in there, why not put in the same place where I get my paycheck? Why not get everything on the app? Why not have my census data and all that information right in the system so I can pull it at any time? I can do workers' comp audits quickly, all that. So I believe, aside from just getting the insurance, there's a lot of things that need to happen. There's COBRA, right? There's also FSA, HSA, all that, right? And you'll see that here. So you can see that HSA, so that's coupled with your high deductible plans. FSAs, right? So they do the administration, reimbursements, just reimbursements, but for any health related thing that you need. POP plans. So look, that's actually doing the pre-tax. That's what you need. You need to have a Section 125 of POP plan in order for it to be coded pre-tax technically. So they're able to help you out there. COBRA administration. This is super important because you let somebody go and you have to give them some sort of paperwork. It's either at 20 employees and above, it's federal typically, and then you always want to defer to the state. In California, it's like 119 or so that you basically need to give them Cal COBRA options. So if you do the COBRA administration, it's pretty cool to do it through your payroll company because as soon as you terminate them, the COBRA paperwork goes out. It goes to the employee. They elect, yes, I would like it. Typically, it's around like 103% or so of the premium, right? Because you're no longer funding it. But once they do elect Cobra, it is going to show up on your medical invoice. I could say that as the broker. And you'll have either a little C or something that shows you that that person's taking Cobra. Now, normally you would collect those funds, normally through payroll, but they're no longer on your payroll. That's why you need a Cobra provider. And they'll help you out with that piece. You don't even need to necessarily talk to the employee. It just gets done through the Cobra administration. Transportation management. I mean, well, this is new. I would say that probably want to talk about this if it's important. If you're in San Francisco, if you're in New York, or any major city, you may want to look at this, especially if it costs $200 or $300 a month for you to do parking. If you're in certain cities, I believe San Francisco actually requires you to have commuter benefits. That's what this would take care of. So these 6 items, I personally believe, are very important to tie into payroll. Why? Because it has the most transaction next to payroll. Payroll is going to happen 52, 26, or 24 times a year. Benefits, this is something that will constantly come up, and it has to happen like very timely. And if you miss any of the steps, it can be it can be interesting if you have the right broker in place, but yeah, it can be a headache. So I always recommend clients, I like to be on the calls when they're going through this stuff, because generally, I've been in this industry for 13, 14 years now. I've seen how to set these things up and make it super simple. And we don't want our clients to think about that stuff necessarily. But if you're going in alone, then you'll want to consider putting that in there. So we'll skip off of benefits for now. The mobile app, I mean, every company pretty much at this stage does have a mobile app. The employee experience piece, community recognition, rewards, all that. I mean, it's important, but I would say we probably save it for the demo, because other than that, right, if I click on it, this really depends. What does this mean to you? Right? It just means different things at different stages to different folks. So until you can really see it come alive and interactive, I mean, again, like you can put like videos on here, all that, but you want to also, I think, close. But yeah, you want to like look at how it's interactive. You can put videos, all that. But again, you really want to make sure it bodes well with your team and how you guys actually interact with one another. Okay. Video, I know I had mentioned LMS and all that before, but video platform. Okay, so you can do employee engagement, you can do employee morale, you can have people watch videos on things. You can even do like this. Hi, I'm Troy McClure. You might remember me from such videos as your company workbook. Like you can do those types of things. From HR's perspective. Or, like one thing that we do with our clients is sometimes we'll record videos that go over the benefits one by one, almost like we would for open enrollment, because they might be trickling folks in throughout the year. And, it's super helpful to have somebody go over live, like what's a HSA, FSA, how does the company plan work, what carrier are we using, how do you download stuff, all that. So you may want to do that. Integrations. Okay, so like the Modern Workforce Index, the reporting software, I always recommend, hey, just at least get the demo for that, get the information on it, because you'll want to know what information you can pull. Here's the cool thing is, whatever information you put into these systems, think about it, you should be able to extract it out. So all the employees' info, how they get paid, the different departments, as much effort as you put into the setup, you'll be able to get back in reporting. And then as far as like how the reports are translated and how you can digest them, that's a little bit of an art. So in that, you have to be clear about what you want and what you need. Otherwise, it'll just be a bunch of fancy tools that sit there and they look great on the presentation. Looks great when you say, hey, we need to go with this company because look at all these little lines and charts they got. But if you're not going to use them, then who cares? Okay, cool. So marketplace. Oh, this is what we really want to pay attention to. Okay, so you see all these different solutions, functionalities, all that stuff. Look at all this stuff. This is where it starts to get interesting. So ease, this is great, right? So some of my clients, we use ease. And when we do use ease for benefits, it goes through. But we are switching to employer navigator because even though this is new, ease is going away. So it'll be interesting to see if they have that. So like you might use an outside ben admin tool like we do, right? Or benefits and retirement. So these are all the different companies you can integrate with. So like Aon, Basic, which I know like Gusto clients use that quite often. Not a, I'll leave that for another video. Cigna, right? You can integrate. So when you look at these, right? So say Cigna is your provider and you go in here, they do Ben admin, they'll do the FSA and HSA. And look, read a little bit more about how it works, but the integrations typically allow for an EDI feed to go in and out. So you decide to get rid of somebody. Now all of a sudden that paperwork for Cobra, all that is integrated into the system, loops back into Paylocity, goes out to the carrier. And then think about it, if you have Cigna, you have Beam or Guardian for dental and vision, you have MetLife for one life insurance policy and hospital indemnity with somebody, all these different things. You're able to connect that through the different carriers. So you want to see like, hey, are my carriers on here? Is it somebody I can use? Employee Navigator, they got it. Great. Great. I love it. I love it. I actually, yeah, I'm glad I went through this now. I actually have somebody I think we can work with on this. If my, this will let me know if my reps are actually going. PTO Exchange, this is a newer company. So that's one thing I will say with companies like Paylocity, they actually are pretty quick to adopt things, and they do have an API, like an open API tech team, who I'm told can help you integrate things as long as you can get like a CSV file or certain file formats that are standard, and they can transmute that information into the system for you. So that's really good. Okay, well, enough of my stuff because I'm a little bit more, I'm going to be more on the benefit side. Look, so like Hello GM, Profit Sword, these are things that people use like in hospitality, so you can actually centralize that. Let's see. There's also like retirement solutions. People have a lot of questions around that. Do they integrate with, this person or that person? Let's say it's like Trans America. Oh no. Transamerica, do they integrate with them? Let's see. Does it happen? Oh, great. Awesome. So they do, right? Let's see if it's like another popular one that doesn't always integrate with everyone. Might be Voya. Okay. Yeah, great. So Voya actually does integrate in there, right? So if you went in here and you're like, hey, I got Voya. How do they integrate? Okay, well, they actually do the retirement plans. They sync the employee demographic data, and then they give them the year-to-date check balances, all that. So basically what it is they'll be able to go into Voya's system and take the information out and put it back into Paylocity so that you can actually see as an employee on your total comp and rewards, hey, like what's your 401k looking like as far as contributions and totals for this year, and possibly your entire amount that you have in your 401k. I would say in that situation, hey, let's have Paylocity show you how that actually works. So again, they have that. They also have different integrations that you may want to look at that are, let's see, like Slack would be one. All right. So you look at Slack. Is it in here? Is it in here? Yes, it is. Okay, so Slack's in here. That's awesome. So if I look at that, cool. Slack is a productivity platform that does blah, blah, blah. This integration provision users access to Slack, keeping teams connected and engaged. So look, I'm not 100% sure exactly what this is supposed to do, but I've seen it integrated in two ways with our clients. It's either A, when you have information that goes into Paylocity, it goes to a designated, like say HR Slack channel, maybe that. The other place where it might, what it might do is take stuff you put in the Slack channel and then throw it into the, like say like the community pool or something like of that nature. I would say that you definitely want to ask about that if you use a lot of Slack and your Slack channels are very set up, and it would be, yeah, it would just be something off your plate that you can take. All right. And then let's see some other things sometimes with like job postings, sometimes like LinkedIn might be something. Let's see if that's in here or not. I use WorkPop. I don't know. Man, that might be something that you need. Our clients haven't used WorkPop before. Clover, this is cool. So if you're retail or point of sale, anybody, restaurant, business, coffee shop, whatever, right? You might have some basic transactions that are able to go right back in there. Especially helpful if you're doing like, sales commissions, things like that. Yeah, so again, like I would say, like you want to visit some of these things, look at them. As far as resources here, like they have blogs, articles, all that, product training courses, events. I would say the events if you're an HR person or if you're looking to like fundraise, anything like that as a founder, get with the salespeople, or like one thing we do is we have a pretty good ecosystem amongst the salespeople at these companies, and just in the, in general we do, because we're working with all sorts of folks. If you find somebody and they're focused on one of those divisions, right? Like say in a good way to use the events would be, if you're looking for a good event, go to Who We Serve. If they say, oh, you know what? They're a nonprofit. Well, if you want to work with other nonprofits or know who's in that person's network, it's very likely that that sales rep is either regional, or what's happening now is everybody seems to be more vertical focused. So all the folks that work with nonprofits in the sales side for Paylocity might know a lot of other ecosystem partners, like folks who are, in the same nonprofit space, accountants in the same nonprofit space, good people to talk to for fundraising, good people to talk to for hosting events or things of that nature. So it is a good networking opportunity, I find, at time for clients. And again, like that's where I feel like building an ecosystem, and us as broker partners, we try to help our clients out with stuff like this, right? Because payroll is not our core thing. We're not going to be in there doing the payroll, but because we have to interact with this stuff and help our clients through it, we feel like it's very important to have these things available to people. So I know they do that. Look, if you want to know more about like the company, who they are, where they're at, you can look at this stuff if it matters to you. I will say one place I personally think is very important to look at is, I like to look at the career section. And then I like to also look at not the employee benefits and perks. Well, let's look at it and see. We're all about you. These are good things. So sometimes, like if you're thinking about like, hey, if I'm in financial services or building a company, all that, like who do they use? Who do they use? So they clearly use Blue Cross and Blue Shield nationally. They got ways. This is like how they work. Some of their messaging is good here. I wouldn't say copy this and throw it on your website, but I would say look at it and see, like, are there things on here you can add? And like leveling up your skills. Sometimes upskilling, and there's companies out there like Career Karma and all that do some of this stuff. Upskilling sometimes can be one of the best ways, especially if you're like trying to retain folks, or if you're going through like a mass budget cut. You lost all your funding, you got to lean out, you just went through an M&A. Sometimes you want to go ahead and upskill folks. So it might make sense to, go ahead and see, does this company practice what they preach? Where I was going to say I like to look is, if you look at the career section and you look in sales, how many sales roles do they have open right now? Are they fully staffed? Are they growing? Right? It looks like remote for enterprise, Atlanta, Texas, California, Chicago. It seems like they're probably backfilling a few roles here. Looks like maybe they're building a team, an additional team here. That could be the case. Let's see, is there more? Seattle, Baltimore. So pretty balanced. I mean, there is a lot of roles open here. It could be either through growth and expansion because they're doing really well. That typically does happen. It also could be too that, like this time of year, in the beginning of the year, that is, you typically want to load up your sales teams, train them, have them go out and prepare for the next busy season, which is usually on the quarterly schedule, or like October through February is typically a very busy time for payroll companies. And if they have a pretty complex sales process and product, then this is actually like a good time for them to load up on salespeople because they don't all make it. They don't. So anyhow, that's our review. And what we would say is, take some of the information that we've gone over, think about how your company really operates. Think about your skills and resources that you specifically have too. Because at the end of the day, this is part of your culture and how you transmit employee communications in a technological world or in this day and age. It does matter. It says something about you. If I give you a piece of paper versus tell you to click this link, how do you feel? Is it on brand? So you want to know your employer brand. You want to know your budget. You want to know the resources that you have available to you. And also, if you need help with changing payroll systems because you just can't stand it and you want to go through Paylocity, feel free to reach out to us directly. We'll book a 30-minute strategy session. And one thing we do with our clients is we do help them out through this process. We also partner with tons of HR companies that can help you out with this process and clean up some other things. So if you either want to work with us or our ecosystem of providers, feel free to reach out. We would love to chat with you, but it never hurts to just talk and point people in the right direction. Again, that's why we do a little 30-minute strategy session to see how we can be helpful, in doing this and talking to thousands of companies. We also will advocate at times. Sometimes it makes sense to stay where you're at, depending on how you answer the questions. So we want to make sure it's worth the juice is worth the squeeze. If you have any other questions, again, feel free to reach out. I wish you the best of luck in looking at all these different solutions, and let us know if you have any other questions. Take care.